Hey everybody, so I wanted to give some insight on the inspiration for this new series and some insight as to the the title of it. So there was an old man. I didn't get to meet him. I've only gotten to know him through his rock collection that I was lucky enough to get a portion of. Now, every time I look at one of these pieces, I think about like the cool adventures that he must have gone on and the cool stuff that he must have been able to see. Uh, and I kind of get to, experience just a little piece of that every time I pull out one of these pieces from this collection. So I wanted to create this series and just honor the memory of a rockhound who had been doing it since like the 40s, I think. There was like a paper in this collection. A lot of it had deteriorated. That was like from 38, if my memory serves, but it was a long time ago. So, yeah, this is in memory of the old man, and let's get into his rocks. So I just want to say right off the jump, if you just want to know what this specimen is called, just jump to the end. I'll put a marker on there so that you can just jump to it. But we're going to go step by step and examine all of the crystallized minerals that are on the specimen. And that's how we're going to try and determine where it's from specifically, geographically, and identify each individual mineral. So looking at your host rock, which is what all these minerals are crystallizing on, you can see that it's that reddish, yellowish kind of color. And we're just going to take a steel pick and kind of probe it a little bit. And that's going to help us to determine the relative hardness of this material. When we refer to the hardness of a rock or a mineral, we're using a scale known as the Mohs hardness scale to determine that hardness. It's a quantitative tool created by Friedrich Mohs to measure a mineral's relative scratch resistance. Understanding the hardness of your material is extremely important for the process of identification. Now here we can see a really cool scale that somebody created that shows all the different hardnesses of some common and, well, some not common minerals, but the more well-known ones at least seem to be on this chart. That's pretty cool. Okay, so now that we've covered what hardness is, let's try to do another test here. And you're going to need a magnet for this one. So a little piece of the host rock fell off, and so I got a magnet to see if it's magnetic. And you can see that we do have some magnetic characteristics from the host rock, but a little crystal cluster fell off of the side of the specimen, and you can see that it does not exhibit the same magnetic characteristics. Okay, so we've determined its color, we've determined it's relatively soft and magnetic. Now it's time to study. So when you're studying, make sure you keep all of your notes close at hand, and you keep all these characteristics and all of your observations in mind. You should also consider that mineralogy is a complex field of study, and without certain specialty equipment, you may not be able to definitively identify the minerals that are on your specimen. But stay vigilant and don't give up. When you find a possible match, put it in your notes and take a look at the composition of what makes up that mineral, because that could give you an indication of other minerals that could be present. And here I've determined that limonite and goethite are both present on this specimen. Both are iron oxides and happen in oxidization zones of hydrothermal vents. So I'm going to note that information because it may be important later. But I can tell you just from experience that I'm almost certain this specimen came from a place with a lot of hydrothermal activity. Alright, so we've determined that there's limonite and goethite in our specimen. So what does that mean? That just means that that's like the main composition of the host rock. So as we take a closer look, we're going to start identifying some of these other minerals that are on top of that host rock. And there's a few things we see right off the bat. So obviously the little blue orbs, some of them have some greenish hues. But I mainly notice this gray, and it's kind of covering the whole specimen, and it seems to be under the minerals where they crystallized. I've determined this to be chlorargyrite, and you'll notice that that grayish hue is very much the same as what we're looking at. And this also becomes darker the more it's exposed to oxidization. It's also really important to note the other minerals that they're associated with, because while you may be able to match the picture to your specimen, observing some of the associated minerals is going to give you a little bit more of a definitive answer. So take a look at this green ball here. You remember the associated minerals that were shown here? Malachite's on that list. And malachite sometimes forms that habit. So we look up malachite and see that it is a copper oxide. Well, we know that this had formed in an oxidization zone of a hydrothermal vent, right? We can allude to that. So maybe that little green ball is malachite, but why isn't there more of it? How come it's only like the one little green ball, but there's a bunch of these blue balls all over the place? The answer is because of a process called pseudomorphism. This term can sometimes be confused with polymorph. Pseudomorph is something completely different, and we're going to go through the differences so that you can remember the correct terminology. Okay, so polymorph. If poly means many and morph means form, then we can remember that polymorph is referring to a mineral that has a lot of forms. So a mineral that has the same composition in different forms. So examples of polymorphic minerals would be calcite, aragonite, and vaterite. And they're all calcium carbonates. But these are all minerals that can exhibit different like crystal habits and come in different forms but still have the same internal structure. Now pseudomorph, since pseudo means pretend and morph means form or shape, we can remember that pseudomorphs are minerals that are pretending to be a different shape. So a mineral that takes the form of another but replaces the internal structure. Example of that would be orichalcite after malachite, which is what's on our specimen here, the little blue balls there. Okay, so we know we have orichalcite after malachite as a pseudomorph here, and we'll get into the pseudomorph stuff a little bit later on in the video, but here we're going to test for UV reaction, and I just got a UV rock light, and that's going to give you some information, but make sure that you're not using a black light because it's not really going to tell you anything. It looks cool, but not really the right tool for the job. Up close we can see one of these pseudomorphic orichalcites and we actually see some other stuff on top of it too, some other crystals around it. But there's acicular habit here, and that just is meaning that it's kind of a radiating spray of crystals. So this is a really super close-up of the surface of one of those orichalcite pseudomorphs, and it is really velvety. And here you can see a almost like a mat of white needle-like crystals with a tetrahedral prism next to it. This is all going to be important information too. You can see another tetrahedral prism, and with a shorter, stubbier, kind of semi-metallic. This crystal is blunted, has a blunted termination, and some striations, it looks like. This one looks, it has a pointed termination. It looked pretty interesting, actually. There's another shot, you can see the same crystal up in the corner, but this shows the velvety surface of the orichalcite. And here I got a real close-up of that crystal to try and get a flash of the crystal face itself. And why is this all important? Well, it's fascinating at the very least, but if you want to get a good identification of the locality of where it came from, then you want to try and identify as many of these minerals as possible, because there are like geologic surveys and different documents and things that you can access if you like really wanted to dive deep, and try to find like a specific locality. And sometimes it takes doing that. Sometimes it's easy. Like sometimes it's a pretty like famous material, but this is the other method that you use to really determine what you're looking at, just one crystal at a time with your microscope, and just be super observant. And you're going to have more questions than answers at some point in the process. It's just kind of how the cookie crumbles. But if you persist and keep studying and keep looking at your specimen, keep taking notes, you're going to find out a lot of answers to those questions, and you're going to learn a lot. So for one mineral to pseudomorph another, they don't always have to be as similar as malachite and orichalcite, which are both copper carbonates. It does help, however, for the two to have atomic similarities, because when one mineral pseudomorphs another, it does it one atom at a time. Here you can see what a pseudomorph of tetrahedrite after limonite looks like when it takes the shape of the stalactite. And we also have some coppery crystals that I don't exactly think are native copper, but there is one specific one that looks like it could be a native copper crystal. Here's a close-up of those rosettes that are on the specimen, and I believe they could be calcite after barite, but it was obviously one of the last things to form on the specimen. Now, one by one, you're going to go through and get all of your possible mineral matches. You're going to note their composition. You're going to pay attention to the environments that they mineralize and that they crystallize in. You're going to pay attention to their associated minerals. And this is all going to lead you closer and closer to having a definitive match. Make sure that you look in several different texts and you do some research online. Make sure that the online research that you're doing is cited research. Otherwise, you might be just getting Joe Schmo's backyard mineral show like I'm showing you right here, and which is why I'm showing you all of the textbooks that I'm using. And I will, from time to time, I'll do some screenshots and some screen recordings of me doing some research and stuff like that. So all of this effort is going to lead you further to what could be on your piece, what could possibly mineralize first, and some of the last things that could mineralize. And you may be seeing stuff on your specimen that doesn't make sense. Look into that too, because sometimes there are cited studies of random occurrences where certain minerals are found next to other minerals that they're typically not. So you never know, you may have a rare find on your hands, but it takes keen observation, and you want to make sure that you have the correct information when you're properly identifying your specimens. There's quite a few references. If you've made it this far into the video, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for watching. While we finish up seeing some of the potential matches on this specimen, I just wanted to tell you guys that if you want to support me, just know that my work is going to get better as I go along. I'm going to stay dedicated to the jewelry a lot, but I do want to make quality videos, and this segment is pretty important to me. I want to be able to identify the old man's rocks and just kind of restore the might and beauty that was this this collection of his. Because when I got it, it had seen better days. I don't think he was able to take care of it for some time, and so I want to be able to re-identify some of this stuff and bring you guys along for the ride. So if you feel inclined, I do have a Patreon that's linked in my bio, and I thank you again for your support. As I look closer into this specimen, I realized that I was looking at something rather unique here, and we're going to go over the geological implications here in a second, but I did determine that this was a Rosasite specimen, and a lot of these characteristics that these crystals have, they're found on Rosasite specimens at the Ojuela mine in Durango, Mexico. The way that I determined this was not random. I entered all of the minerals that I could possibly think to remember that I definitively found on this piece, put them into the search engine, and it seemed like specimens with these minerals come from Durango, Mexico a lot of the time. So they come from other places, but that was the first one, so that was the one that I started looking into. And as you look further into it, you kind of scroll through some of the specimens. We know from looking in the textbooks that sometimes the specimens they take pictures of are very clean, and they just might not be what we have. And also what we have there's a lot of different minerals on it. So, you just keep looking, and then bingo, there it is. It's a piece of Rosasite. That looks really familiar, does it not? That's how I made my deduction, and I just wanted to show you my process to help you with your specimens in the future. But we're not quite done yet here, because if I know anything about the old man by his collection, I know that he had an extra special piece of Rosasite, which is evident by all the crazy minerals that we're seeing here. So how did our piece form? Let's look into it. It seems that there's a large variety of different mineral specimens that come from this area, but why is that? Well, if we look at the geography of Mapimi, then we'll get some insight into why they're finding such a diverse range of minerals there. Now you can see it's very arid and it's very mountainous. You can elude that means that there was a lot of tectonic and volcanic activity there. The location of Mapimi in Durango, Mexico is shown on this map here, and where Durango is, here's a little bit of a better picture. Now here's a picture of the bridge that goes across to the mine that's relatively famous. When you search for the Ojuela mine, you get pictures of this bridge. When you look at the history of the ojuela mine, it was actually a really large part of a trade route that ran through Mexico up into the United States, and they mined it for about 350 years. At one point, the resources dried up and eventually became a ghost town, but there was an enormous amount of hydrothermal activity that created a wide range of different specimens. So when mineral collectors found what a wide range of specimens were there, they figured out that some of these specimens were worth more than the gold and silver that they had mined there before. Researching the history of this mine, it really makes me feel like the old man. He had his finger on the pulse. He was like out there really doing that thing. But this mine yielded 117 different specimens. And oh my God, look at some of these. They're absolutely breathtaking. After volcanism and tectonic activity, channels are created in these mountains that carry mineral-rich solutions, which are deposited in these vents. Every time a hydrothermal event happens, it could be carrying different minerals than the last time, which can deposit new minerals and create pseudomorphs and crusts over old minerals. This website, Mindat, is very good if you want to get like real deep into this. It has a lot of fakes and deceptions for like what people think come from that mine. They actually come from a different mine in Mexico, and it has the whole list. Look at this list of minerals that are found at this mine. It's just mind-blowing, but at the same time, it really gives us some insight as to why our specimen is so diverse. So as we look at a few close-up images of some of these minerals, I want you to imagine an arid landscape that's iron rich, and it undergoes volcanism and tectonic activity. Plates are pushed under each other. New material is pushed up through magma vents and dispersed through the landscape. and recycled again, and hydrothermal activity is pushing minerals up into this newly formed mountain range, forcing its way through the rock, making these new cavities and dispersing its liquid solution in the old ones. And each time these hydrothermal events happen, over and over again, they carry different solutions, depositing different minerals, sometimes depositing minerals they had deposited before, enriching the crystallized minerals already present. Eventually, the vein stops seeing hydrothermal fluid and oxidization begins, creating yet another form of mineralization on the same specimen. The fluctuation of these events, as well as evaporation of these solutions, can add mineral diversity to these specimens. There's a geological history that is implicated here, and when you see a piece like this, it's like taking a snapshot into the past. This is Mother Nature in its raw form. I hope that you had a good time watching this video and doing some research with me. I had a blast making it, and now we know that this specimen is Rosasite. We also know a lot more about the minerals and the mine that it came from, so we can consider ourselves a little bit smarter, I guess. Well, I don't know. I guess that's subjective. Well, if you liked this video, please like and subscribe. The old man had a lot more rocks. I'd love to show you all, and your support goes a long way. Alright guys, keep rocking, and I'll catch you in the next one. Later.